Hello, everybody. Welcome along. This is the first of our editions of the Vodcast podcast for Yorkshire Podcast Studios. I'm James Buttler. Hello. And alongside me, my good friend and colleague, David Easson. David.
I am David Easson. Hello.
It's the first time we've done this, isn't it? And we've
it's not the first time we've been in this studio. It's the first time we've tried to show off ourselves.
I've sat in this seat many a time. But the reason we're doing this podcast and starting it up as Yorkshire Podcast Studios is because we keep telling everybody that the best way of marketing yourselves and the best way of communicating is by doing a podcast and a vodcast. And it dawned upon us one day, David, that we weren't doing one ourselves.
No, we're so busy working for other people and making other content for them that we really should have got about to this a little bit earlier. But just to show off the audio-visual possibilities of what we've got here at Yorkshire Podcast Studios. We're currently in Studio 1, aren't we?
We are indeed. There are other studios available. We'll show you around as we go through this series of podcasts. But and one of the reasons that we thought it'd be a good idea to do it ourselves, because we've had customers come in, they're doing it themselves, and they're finding great success with their product, aren't they? And it's actually working for them.
Well, yes. And what they need to do, having had great success with their products, is actually get that out into the big wide world. And this is the easiest way to do it, because it's direct. And direct marketing is clearly the best way of doing things. We are high-tech, high-quality, and direct to your customers, and whether that be a business customer or customer.
Because what we found, I won't mention the companies themselves, but they've come in, and particularly for companies that have got a lot of staff that are based in various areas of the country even, that they can't get under the one roof. You can't just call a meeting in the local village hall and tell everybody what you're doing. The podcast has turned out to be a very good way of dealing with people, telling them answering questions, telling people what's happening within the company without actually moving from the chair.
Yeah, we've worked out so far that the customers that we've been working with have had probably one of three kind of main ways of approaching what they do. And we'll go across those as this goes on. But the first one there is that internal communications. Very directly, are you speaking to your staff in an effective way? And if you are talking to them, are they listening? Never mind, are they hearing? Are they reading the emails that you send them? Are they in meetings? They might be in meetings, but are they there? Are they actually there and listening to what you're saying? And do they know who you are? If you're a big company, multi-locations, you might have a lot of staff working at home, particularly post-COVID. Are they aware of what your company is up to in the past week, the past few weeks? More importantly, I think, do they know where you're going, where you're taking your business, and hopefully taking them along with you?
And that's one of the reasons we wanted to do this, really, was to actually talk to you guys out there, tell you what we're doing, tell you what's available here, tell you about our success stories. As we go through this series, we'll probably have some of our customers on here as well, telling you about their experience of working with YPS and how they've found it and what they've achieved as a result of doing that. And we wanted to be able to talk to you and show you around our studios. One of the things that we've had as well, because we're yet to actually celebrate our first birthday officially as Yorkshire Podcast Studios.
Like the King has an official birthday.
Yeah,
he has two birthdays.
So we could say our unofficial ones today. Happy birthday, Dave. But the
non-birthday, I'll take that one.
I think it's August we bring up our first birthday. We know kind of what we're doing, and we have kind of set up the studios to give you the best possible service. But we've learnt things in the first year as well, haven't we? Some of the things that maybe we've missed, some of the things we wanted to polish up and make better. And we'll show you in subsequent podcasts our other studio, which has been done up very nicely, hasn't it?
Done up lovely. What I must say as well is we built these studios for ourselves, for another company that we've got, Sports Broadcast Media, and having built the studios, and we're very open about this, it's like, well, we're using them for a couple of hours each day. Other people need to use these. We need them used, but also what a great facility we've got. And we saw the opportunities, the flexibilities of the studios that we've created. And as we've needed to do more with our sister company, then that obviously makes it possible for YPS, Yorkshire Podcast Studios, to help you as our customers even more, to reach your own customers, or as I say, your own staff.
One of the people we should say thank you to is Leeds City Council. The Adventure Funds grant that we got has helped us do the studio next door, and that is very much appreciated.
I think we should show them some pictures of that right now.
Well, shall we? I've done a little video. Let's have a look at that.
Go on then.
So that is where we are as a company. There are our new plush studios. They look rather good, don't they? And they are good. We've already had people using them. They're all. I mean, we've had 100% good satisfaction from our customers since we started. But the wow factor of people walking into the studio and actually going, literally, wow, this is really cool, has actually increased no end since the new studios have been in operation.
Yeah, and the great thing about it is it's multifunctional. We've moved it all into one room, but that certainly doesn't mean that we've narrowed down what is possible. So we've got at least 2 sets that we've got there, but actually you can change things around. You can do all sorts in there. We've got the brick wall on one side, and then that kind of... I like to compare my ITV and BBC morning shows as to what we've created. So we've got a bit of a morning live and a bit of the This Morning as well. And there might be some Lorraine in there, and who doesn't want that?
Well, we'll put Lorraine on the green screen because we've got green screen capabilities in there as well. So it's, although, as Dave says, there is just the one room, there are almost infinite possibilities in terms of the angles you can get and how you can make it look different to everybody else that uses the podcast. If you're recording at YPS, you're not all going to be walking out with exactly the same looking podcast. You can make it look and feel exactly how you want it to be and make it your own. We should say who we are as well, because one of the things that we've... in conversations that we've got a business advisor. We've got, we do things properly here. We're a proper company, and we
you keep telling yourself.
Yeah, you keep telling us. And one of the things he said when we met him, Bruce, he said, asked us who we were. And he said, well, why don't you tell people who you are? Because, and it kind of dawned upon us that we've all got decades of experience.
We've all got a past.
Yeah. Some of it more murky than others. But we've all got decades of experience in terms of the broadcasting industry. And that is what maybe sets us apart from other companies that offer very, podcasting services and video services. Because we've been in this seat. We've done this for a living. My background, after I got through kind of wayward years working at a local authority, my love is cricket, got into working for Yorkshire County Cricket Club. From there, started working in radio, doing sport, commentating on cricket, commentated on tennis, commentated on all sorts of different sports as well. Set up a podcast myself right in the early days of podcasting. I've done now 570 odd episodes of the Cricket Badger podcast. So I know as well as a result of that what kind of maybe you're faced with out there in terms of the challenge of setting some... So, I came from a position of actually being quite used to talking to something that looks like that, a microphone for those listening. And I still found it that I was spending money on stuff I didn't need. I was trying to it was trial and error, and I was trying to work out what to do. If something like this, Yorkshire Podcast Studios, had been in operation at the start of that process for me, I would have saved a fortune in terms of my setup costs and in terms of how I plan things out. And it also gives you an appointment to kind of do stuff, because if you book in, you come along and you do it, and you don't kind of put things off and procrastinate in terms of doing the podcast. So that would have been exceptional for me. And obviously then, as part of my journey through my working life, I met Dave and other people at another place where we were doing radio, and we kind of came together at the end of that journey and said, that's too good to kind of turn our back on. Let's try and actually make a company out of this. And as Dave has already said, YPS was spawned from that. But so I've got something to give in terms of my experience. You've come from probably more of a orthodox radio background, ain't you?
Yeah, and a journalistic background, which I'm finding, speaking to business people who are coming in and wanting to work with us here at YPS, is something that might be something new. And if something is new and can work for you, then hopefully that means that we can work together. I'm a journalist by trade, a radio journalist, and I'm kind of obsessed with storytelling, and particularly in podcasting. In radio, you don't get the chance to do that so much anymore, but actually what you are trained to do is get the story over in as short a time as possible and in as simple a way as possible. And that's where I think a lot of podcasts might fall down, in that they ramble a little bit. But this is about brevity, but also getting the real story over there in as short a time as you can. So as a radio journalist, newsreader, sports reporter, football commentator, interviewer, to me, it's clear it's all about people. It's about you. It's not about me. I'm a mere facilitator of doing that. So it's my job to make sure that you tell your story in exactly the right way. And when we do make podcasts and productions for businesses when they come in, I can hopefully use that skill one way or another. Sometimes I'm on screen, and I will actually be that facilitator, that interviewer, interlocutor. I quite like that word. Look it up. And
Did somebody buy you a thesaurus for Christmas?
Oh, yeah. I love those dinosaurs. And great toys. So it's about me sometimes playing that kind of everyman woman role and saying, okay, well, tell me what your business is about.
Well, that's kind of one of the things that we've all got in common, isn't it? Because as a podcast presenter, I mean, I've interviewed cricketers as well and interviewed sports people. It's that because you're passionate about the subject you're working in, you're interested in who you're talking to.
Yeah.
So you're kind of trying to pry stuff out and you're trying to structure your interviews in the right way. And that is where we come in as well in terms of our customers. They come in, some people come in with a very fixed idea about how they want things to be. Some people come in saying, we've had this idea, we're not quite sure how we're going to play this. And that's where maybe some of that experience can come in, helping them actually structure it and helping them to get it from an idea into being on screen and in your ears.
Yeah, because we've all watched and listened to podcasts made by individual companies, and it's great that people are trying to get out there and trying to do stuff, and they're creating some really good stuff and talking about their own company in the way that they want to get that out there. But it might not necessarily be the sort of content that makes that connection, and the connection is another one of my buzzwords with this. If you are trying to get new customers or retain customers that you're working with right now, are you maintaining them as good customers and also taking them on the journey with you? Because you're changing as a business. You've got new targets, new places to go. Are you retaining them whilst also bringing in new customers as well? And it's all about maintaining that connection. And storytelling is my thing, and that's where the podcasts I like listening to are where stories are told, and told particularly well, and hopefully quite innovatively too.
That's a very nice little link into
it's got a radio segue.
The next subject that we're going to be talking about is our own favourite podcast that we listened to over the years. So we might as well start with you. You've got that in your mind. What have you enjoyed listening to, watching in the past?
Well, the first one that I remember, and you've got to remember, podcasts have been going probably about 20 years now, and the initial podcasts, your Ricky Gervais's, your Adam and Joe's, that were really, really big spin-offs from radio, didn't make any money at all when they were general podcasts, because there was no way to monetize anything. You had to literally download them onto your iPod at that time.
We can also make you a coffee as well.
Make you a coffee. So onto your iPod even, and that's how they became known as a podcast. I think it's some bloke in The Guardian or Stuart McConey. Someone says it was they invented the podcast. It may well have been Stuart McConey in The Guardian.
There's a story on we do a blog on our website, and there's where do podcasts come from, the history of podcasts, and I cover that in that. I wrote that up, and you can read that on Yorkshire Podcast Studios.com.
But the first one I remember, and actually I remember the adverts from, which probably tells you a bit about how you can actually monetize, is
you're going to mention something I was going to mention as well.
Are we mentioning Serial?
Yes.
So Serial season 1. Which was a spin-off from This American Life, which is also one of my favourite podcasts. They're telling stories in different ways. It's American. It's a murder mystery. It's a cold case. It's a reworking of a proper murder mystery. Although it's true and it's real and it's still going on today.
And it's brilliant because they basically reopen this case as a podcast and forensically go through every step of the way in terms of the trial, in terms of the investigations the police made, in terms of the ultimate conviction of the gentleman that was charged with the crime. And kind of
did he do it?
Things have moved on in terms of what they were able to do in the years that he'd been in prison, and they cast doubt on the case, and ultimately it led. Well, no spoilers alert, but it led to a very interesting ending. And it's, as you say, there's still updates now in terms of his situation. I thought it was compelling because it was like watching an episode of Inspector Morse or something, but it was a real life case. And she was absolutely exceptional at presenting it and getting it across. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant.
If anyone has seen Only Murders in the Building, there is a version of Sarah Koenig in that as the podcast producer extraordinaire. I would recommend anything from NPR in America. So This American Life is out every week, and is kind of 3 stories told every week with a very vague theme, but they're told in a very personal way. They're almost all just kind of one-to-one, almost not lectures, but they're single spoken word. You might get some interviews in there, and as I say, different ones spawned out of that. Serial did. S-Town is particularly good that they made as well, which is 12 episodes of a real mystery, which is almost a novel. It could almost be written down in the deep south. That's a spectacular podcast. And yeah, those are the ones that I like that tell stories, individual 20-minute stories being told. Or, as you say, you can go over 12 episodes and really spread that out. But every time, the important thing is, and I remember where I was walking the dog the first time I listened to the first episode of Serial, when questions were being asked of you, the listener, literally. Do you remember what you were doing 10 days ago or last Friday? Do you remember where you were all the way through that? Do you remember what was going on? Do you remember who you saw? Do you remember who you spoke to? And that kind of questioning makes you think of, well, it takes you back, and actually the perils of memory and actually how it can seriously affect people's lives if you can't remember, or you remember the wrong thing, or you remember the wrong time.
Yeah, and if you've not ever listened to that, it'll still be available. So have a listen to that. 'Cause it is an excellent podcast, and it'll still be very much if you're new to it. It would still be a very good listen now, despite the fact that it's several years old now. I mean, you've mentioned Ricky Gervais. That was something that I absolutely loved back in the kind of the noughties, 2004, 2005. It kind of started going, that one, and just the. Just random chats they were having. It was ridiculous, but they discovered Carl Pilkington, their producer, who could speak kind of vaguely and was very funny, and gradually took the mickey out of him, and very funny episodes. It was an XFM radio show that they ended up podcasting, and the three of them, Stephen Merchant, Ricky Gervais and Carl Pilkington, took that on and became the #1 podcast in the world. It was absolutely superb.
And yet losing money because they would make each one into a cartoon.
I think they've made money since.
Yes.
They've made money since.
You go back and they've started making money on it.
But things have moved on, haven't they? Because, I mean, going back to those days, it was very much in the ears and you couldn't see anything. It was just they took a photograph at the start of it, and that was the only thing you ever saw of the people that were in it. Whereas now, as we are now, we can be very much on screen and then putting the audio out later. And the podcast I probably listen to and watch most at the moment is the Stick to Football, the overlap thing off Sky. Obviously, they've got a lot of money and the set's excellent. And Gary Neville, Jamie Carragher, etc., Ian Wright on that, and talking about something I really enjoy watching, football, but doing it in a very, from a player's perspective and having a good chat and having guests on that. And that is very successful on Sky, and it just shows you how far things have moved on from the old kind of just speaking into a microphone to actually having almost a TV program going out as a podcast.
And the difference in that is, and I think it's something that really can cross over and can relate to business and to what you want to do as a business and company owner, is that it's not a TV show. And it's not bound by the restrictions of television. It's obviously still bound by legalities, but it's not bound by time. It's not bound in a radio format. It's not bound by we've got to go to the news or we've got to play an advert now. It's bound by your own boundaries that you set. And that's why the word honesty will probably be mentioned in this quite a lot. And what you want from people like Gary Neville and Roy Keane and Ian Wright is a certain degree of honesty that takes us behind the curtain, which if they are on Match of the Day or on ITV Football or Sky, they wouldn't be encouraged to come up with. Occasionally they would be, and those kind of nuggets hit very well on TV. But if you can see Roy Keane as a real human being, which might be different to his ITV persona or his Sky Sports persona.
It's his job.
Well, yeah, maybe
it's his job.
Maybe
he's
it's
got
the same
gloves on.
persona.
He's a goalkeeper. It's his job.
That's his job. He's got to do it. Why will you not be putting in all the effort? Apologies to my Irish friends there. But it's that honesty.
Was that Irish? Sorry.
Exactly. So it's if you can show who you are on screen and on air as well, which is completely different to being a kind of a flashy video, or you're trying to do a TV show where you're putting on a persona, the old kind of marketing kind of, this is us, come down, we'll give you a deal. That's not the point. And
I liked it so much I bought the company.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we've all heard radio adverts where going way back. I think Frank's Factory Flooring is still going on Teesside, but Frank would come in and do his adverts.
And DFS is still having a sale, aren't they?
They are still having a sale. There would be, we're trying to work out now, because we've all been on the radio for a long time. And I remember, you remember the adverts, sometimes just by the personas. I don't remember the one from the Widnes Car Centre. But it was John Leach. That's it. John Leach from the Widnes Car Centre. Hello, John, if you're watching or listening. But you remember those. But that was a persona put on by the guys who wanted to put themselves out there. And they did bravely, and it worked well, because I'm still remember them 20 years on.
But what we can offer you, and as a company, is kind of pulling the curtain back a little bit on that kind of superficial almost one-liner that you give out on an advert, to actually unveil yourselves, tell people who you really are, tell people why you care about what you do, show that you're an expert in that field, because many of you who run a business know as much as anybody out there in terms of that part of the sector that you work in. So set yourselves up as an authority with your podcast. And as you said, I mean, we've both worked on radio shows where you are basically 10 seconds to the news, 9, 8, 7, and you're trying to get your words out to maybe link to the news perfectly. On a podcast, we can just keep rabbiting away until we've reached the conclusion, and then that's when we say goodbye.
But there are always points where you have to say, time to stop and shut up. Yeah. And who knows, we might have reached that point already here. But what we've found...
Well, we're not too far away. I've got some notes here. We're not too far away from the end.
With production going on. So production is part of what we offer here, and that just doesn't mean the bells and whistles, the intros, the outros. That means actually talking to you before we hit record and say, okay, what do you actually want here? What are you trying to produce, so that you don't produce an hour's worth of content that doesn't go anywhere, but you can produce probably the 10, the 5, the 3-minute content that can really hit home, maybe the 1 minute, the 30-second content. That's what you will need, and that's what you'll find, hopefully on a bit of a journey with us, with people that we've worked with so far, of finding their way, finding their niche. And also going back to the honesty point, we've found that when we've spoken to people so far, that there are always themes that go through businesses and business coaching with our business coaches in, and the way that some themes are coming through the industries at the moment. Honesty is a massive thing. It's about putting yourself out there. It's that showing the human beings that are behind the flashy exterior that mean that actually businesses will make that connection once again, and we'll keep coming back.
And in terms of internal communications, it's about being open and honest with your staff, isn't it? And we've had a number of podcasts that come in who have the kind of Q&A part of their podcasts, where the staff send in a question about what's happening in their industry, and the bosses on the podcast answer that question openly and honestly, so everybody can hear the answer. And that's quite refreshing, I think, because we've all worked in companies where you don't get told anything. But to open things up and actually have that dialogue with people, it might not be the answer that everybody wants to hear, because that's business. Sometimes the things that you decide upon, or the things you have to do, aren't always flavour of the month. But at least you know, don't you? At least as the person working,
one of the companies, quite a big company, that comes in to work with us every so often, every quarter. They come in and do their Q&A session based on what their staff have sent in, and then they get feedback. They make sure that they get the feedback, and they work with the content that they're producing. And one of those was, well, thank you for answering the question. I didn't like the answer, but thank you for even putting it to the boss, because we didn't think you would do that.
Yeah.
And that honesty works in a lot of ways. And those internal communications, people think podcasts are always external, always out and about, always, where am I going to get this? Is it on Apple Podcasts? Is it on Spotify? Your content, you can put it wherever you like. So you can put it on an intranet if you want. You can put it on an email with a link there, but it's there for people to watch, to listen to, as they're working for you.
So if you want to get in touch with us, YorkshirePodcastStudios.com is the email address. We're going to be back with more of these videos and podcasts as we go through to show you what our studios can provide. I mean, this is only one example. We have other studios, we have other scenes, we have other settings, we have other things that we can offer you. It might not be for you, but give us a ring. Come in and have a chat, have a look around, share a cup of coffee with us.
Yeah, put your logo here.
Yorkshire Podcast Studios on the side of it, look. You can discuss it with us. Have a look around, and we can talk about how we can help you get your podcast out there and your vodcast out there, and how you can communicate with your staff, how you can tell the wider world about the product and the industry that you're in. And I think you'll find that we're quite approachable. We're all right, aren't we?
We're all right. It's my job as a producer now to tell you to shut up, James, end the podcast.
Well, we'll see you next time.